So I want to ask you this, which is, I think, a question a lot of people in the Democratic Party are asking. Do you still see a path to the nomination? Obviously, you're behind the delegates. It looks like a very hard path. And if not, why are you remaining in the race?
Well, we're about 300 delegates behind. Biden has 1,200. We have 900. There is a path. It is admittedly a narrow path. But I would tell you, Seth, that there are a lot of people who are supporting me. We have a strong grassroots movement who believe that we have got to stay in order to continue the fight, to make the world know that we need Medicare for all, that we need to raise the minimum wage to a living wage, that we need paid family and medical leave, one of the crises that we're dealing with right now, that we must address climate change and education, all the issues that we have been talking about. Campaigns are an important way to maintain that fight and raise public consciousness on those issues. So that's, I think, one of the arguments for going forward.
And do you feel as though you've had a slight leg up in the way you've had to campaign in this digital age with your early work as a public access performer in your days as a Burlington mayor?
Well, we have put over the years, as a U.S. senator and as a candidate, a whole lot of effort into social media and into live streaming. And we have, given the fact that I can't be out on the campaign trail, the rallies, et cetera, we have been using our live stream, and we usually get, sometimes 1 million, sometimes 2 million viewers. So we have put a lot of resources into that. We do it pretty well. And I think we do have an advantage over other folks in that regard.
Obviously, you're
Bernie Sanders explaining why he's staying in the race. And personally, I agree that he should stay in the race. I've made my opinions felt about what he should be doing in the race at this particular point if he really wants to get those particular items accomplished. But I get it. You get yourself in a particular mindset, and it's difficult to shake that mindset. My wife and I goes to, I think it's Madrid. There's this thing called the Place of Ham. And in our heads, we're going to eat everything that's in there. We get in there, spend like $50, and we realize, fuck, we could have spent $10, got a plate with a bunch of other ones. But again, in our head, it was difficult to kind of change that particular point of view. Even when you're sitting in there, even when you're seeing everything else that's going on, your point of view was set before you walked in. Sanders has a particular point of view of how he was going to run this race, and he was not deviating from that particular point of view. In some respects, that level of integrity and ideological adherence is a strength. In other respects, especially when that ideology doesn't line up with the environment to which you find yourself, it is a persistent and prevalent weakness. And I would make the argument that Sanders, despite the media being against him, despite the oligarchs being against him, despite the entire party being against him, the thing that killed Sanders was Sanders himself. And that level of weakness is still being exposed in the campaign right now. Not even Sanders, but people around Sanders that are trying to tell Sanders to get out of the race. His own contingent of human beings. How pathetic and appallingly weak that these people in the campaign are changing their particular point of view of Sanders and telling him get out. And the advice is not even good. If you're going to advise him on anything, you should be advising him on what takes place after this election, after this campaign folds up. Sanders is nearly an 80-something-year-old man. If this election goes kaput, if Joe Biden doesn't collapse, if these races aren't postponed and Joe Biden doesn't get a chance to show how weak, feckless, and ineffectual, not to mention cognitively challenged that he is, what comes next? If you're going to advise Sanders on anything, that should be the advice. How do we make something that exists and persists outside of the context of this election? When this election goes tits up, how do we ensure that something of this survives to ensure that this movement goes on without me being here? You always make this argument, not me, us. Shouldn't you ensure that the us can persist outside of you? This campaign, elements of the campaign, is telling Sanders to get out the race and to drop out. Appallingly weak. And it's not what you should be doing in the middle of a crisis. Welcome to the soapbox. My name is Jamal Thomas. This is the Progressive Soapbox. Guys, if you dig this content, please like, share, subscribe. You can always support PayPal, Patreon. This is an early morning soapbox. The show will still be on Political Misfits at 12 p.m. to 2 p.m. Eastern. We are hunkered down, so you're not necessarily going to see us, but you will hear us, and the shows tend to be extraordinarily good. People in the Sanders camp are advising Sanders to drop out. I saw this. And to say I was enraged is an understatement. I'm an Aries moon, after all. Virgo ascendant, Virgo sun, but that Aries moon is a hard dog to keep on the porch, especially when I see levels of weakness that is mind-boggling, levels of unimagination that is mind-boggling. You're in a presidential campaign and you're a senator. And right now, we're in the middle of a crisis. We're in the middle of a crisis where the majority of the population has said yes, with 10 million people losing their jobs, with millions of people without health insurance. Yes, by 9 points. Medicare for all is a better option in this situation. Republicans, Democrats, independents, agreed. En masse, majority, Medicare for all. You're the spearhead of that. You was able to get that over the finish line where those numbers moved in that direction. Yes, you had the help of a virus, but you going around the country making the argument, even in states where you lost by 30 points, you still won the argument on Medicare for all. And as Senator of the United States, the best that you could do, and head of a movement, the best that you could do in this is to get $2 million for the various people. Yes, the $2 million is beneficial to the COVID-19 thing. I have no issue with that. My argument is something slightly different. You are the head of a quote-unquote political revolution, and you just so happen to be in a political process where you're running for president of the United States. Meaning, even if media tries to deprioritize you, you still have a megaphone. You still have the capacity to connect millions of people across the United States. What should you be doing in this moment? And please expand your imagination beyond, I'm just running in a political campaign, doing the exact same thing that I did to get me to the political position that I'm in now, where I have been effectively pushed to the side with Joe Biden as being the accepted nominee. To have people urge him to drop out shows a failure of leadership and a failure of imagination and just abysmally weakness. A small group of Bernie Sanders' top aides and his allies, including campaign manager and longtime strategist, have encouraged the independent senator from Vermont to consider withdrawing from the presidential race, according to two people who had knowledge of the situation. The group includes campaign manager Faiz Shakir and Representative Jayapal, a top Sanders surrogate and ally, according to the people who spoke with the condition of anonymity, who described the private, sensitive discussions. Beyond Shakir and Jayapal, longtime strategist Jeff Weaver has privately made the case that exiting the race more quickly on good terms with Biden would give Sanders more leverage in the long term, according to one of the people, and others said Weaver used a light touch in presenting his case. Weaver and Jayapal did not return calls back for a message. That's ludicrous. That's ludicrous. When they asked various people who were part of Joe Biden's campaign, what are you going to give Sanders? In order to get those people, they said, we don't believe Sanders is going to get anything else from Joe Biden in this case. He just should get out the race. Sanders has already given his support to Joe Biden. So it didn't matter. He didn't have to give you anything. This is what I mean by weakness. Joe Biden is not going to offer you anything because you've already given your support over to Joe Biden. You're already going to shuck and jive to get your people to vote for Joe Biden. And Biden and his campaign, Biden is confident the Bernie supporters will fall in line. I love that. Fall in line. Get your mind right and vote Joe Biden. Not giving you a goddamn thing. The wild part about this is just a few months ago, when all of these other Democrats were in the race and they believed Sanders was going to run away with it, that he was the presumptive nominee, all of them were here.
We are less than 2 weeks away from a national primary. And I want to ask all of you this simple question. There's a very good chance none of you are going to have enough delegates to the Democratic National Convention to clinch this nomination. Okay? If that happens, I want all of your opinions on this. Should the person with the most delegates at the end of this primary season be the nominee, even if they are short of a majority? Senator Sanders, I'm going to let you go last here because I know your view on this. So instead, I will start with you, Mayor Bloomberg.
Whatever the rules of the Democratic Party are, they should be followed. And if they have a process, which I believe they do,
I'm trying to do
so
this,
that
yes or no, to make
everybody
it
else,
fast.
everybody can.
So you want the convention to work its will?
Yes.
Senator Warren.
But a convention working its will means that people have the delegates that are pledged to them, and they keep those delegates until
Should the leading
you come
person?
to the convention. All
No?
of
Okay.
the people.
All righty. Vice President Biden?
Play by the rules.
Yes or no? Leading person with the delegates, should they be the nominee or not?
No, let the process work its way out.
Mayor Buttigieg?
Let the process work its way out. Let the process work its way out. Fair enough. That means each and every one of those people on that debate stage, including Warren, Warren did not have a chance to win a state. Very clear. Elizabeth Warren did not have the potential or the chance to win a state, let alone her own state, and she stayed in the race. The woman who said she would never use a super PAC, she was against using a super PAC. I don't like this dark money. At the very least, I don't like it now. I was okay with it before I got into the primary. I was going to be okay with it when I got out into the general. That woman used a super PAC in order to stay in the race on Super Tuesday in order to split the vote for Bernie Sanders. She had no potential to win a state. She had no potential to win her own state, and yet she stayed in the race. Warren, we're going to have a brokered convention. Biden, we're going to have a brokered convention. Buttigieg, we're going to have a brokered convention. Klobuchar, we're going to have a brokered convention. Sanders, at this point, believing himself to be the presumptive nominee, we shouldn't have a brokered convention. This would be horrible. The person with the most delegates should win. They, all of them, were for a brokered convention. And you guys are telling him to drop out of the race. This is kind of my point. All of those cutthroat Democrats were perfectly on board with tearing the party to shreds in order to prevent Sanders from winning this race. Sanders, on the other hand, and again, Warren had no potential to win anything, and nobody got into this main thing of she needs to drop out, she needs to drop out, she needs to drop out. Nobody did that. But Sanders, he needs to drop out, he needs to drop out. He's only 300 points away. We're in the middle of a pandemic. Joe Biden is being accused of rape. That has just been aired on Fox News. And fact of the matter is, it is conceivable, it's possible, that Joe Biden is so weak, feckless, ineffectual, cognitively challenged that him standing in front of the public realizes he is not up to this. And in the next few states, collapses. We've had collapses in this race twice. It's not inconceivable that such can happen again with a weak candidate like Joe Biden. My point is, in the capacity of this race, where all of these other Democrats that were in the race were perfectly okay with going to a brokered convention, for you to turn around and not have some ire and anger and a little bit of bitterness at that, to say, we're staying in the race. And not just we're staying in the race, we're thinking beyond this race. This is my point. I hate this level of weakness. This level of weakness is the reason you lost. Understand what I'm saying here. This level of weakness where your elements, people around your campaign will turn around to you and tell you to get out the race. That is why you lost. You should not be willing. You should not be willing to take actions or to limit yourself from actions that every other candidate on the stage were perfectly willing to engage in. All of them were willing to put a knife in you. All of them were willing to talk about your health. All of them were willing to trash your supporters. Each and every one of these people on this stage were willing to put a knife in you, and you decided to put your knife and your guns away. Political malpractice. And now you have these people telling you to get out the race. Don't get out the race. What I'm asking you is something very basic. Think beyond this race. You are the head of a political revolution, and you just so happen to be a senator. If in the political space you've been limited, if you have been put to the side, then maybe you need to think more about the political revolution, especially in the context of what happens when this race ends. Please turn all of that email list, all of those people who you engage, all of those people who are showing up at your barn burner rallies. Bring all of those people under one umbrella in regards to communication and web those people together. Tie those people together. Those are millions and millions of people all across the United States. And allow those people to engage, talk, argue, bitch with one particular mindset and one particular focal point. in regards to what it wants regarding policy and what is not willing to accept beyond that. Meaning that large contingent of human beings say, this is what we want. This is our litmus test. You either accept it or you don't. If you get 20% of the population that stops engaging with the Democratic Party in regards to politics and consider themselves as something fundamentally different with a neural center created by your campaign and that large list, not to mention the money that those people give you. I'm saying start thinking about your campaign in fundamentally different terms, as opposed to running this entirely as a political campaign. What you have done has gotten you to the point where you are now, where you're going to lose this race, potentially. Can you use the resources and the money at your disposal for something else? And can you use that looking to persist itself beyond this race and into the future, where you have a large group of people as a substructure under political space that argue, bitch, and moan and come up with ideas in regards to what they are willing to accept in the political space, and have them as a litmus test vote in mass for or against various political actors that are not towing their particular political agenda. Stop fucking around. If we are indeed the conscience of this nation, we need to be lions in the way that we defend these particular ideas. And the race to the bottom with the Democratic Party that has taken place over the last 40 years hasn't done it. What have you accomplished? You're not getting Medicare for all, despite the fact the majority of the public said we want it. Joe Biden literally says, I will veto that legislation. I don't care what you want. You're not getting anything out of me. You're going to vote for me just because I'm not Trump. You've done it for the last 40 years. Why are you going to do something different now? Will that get you the policies that you want? That entire party lined up against you, your candidate, your policies, despite the fact that all those policies were popular. Your adherence to the Democratic Party, believe it or not, has been a thing that has stopped you from getting what you wanted in the political space, and without any level of accountability has put ineffectual leaders in that race. You are looking at them as black voters. Why are they taking me for granted? Because you vote 90% to that party, meaning they don't have to give you anything because you've already given them everything. How you look at politics is wrong. The Sam Cedars of the world is wrong. You need to be able to say no. And in saying no, being able to withdraw and stop this cowardly, you have nowhere else to go, acquiescence. You need to change how you engage this political space. And this weakness will only be taken advantage of. Your politicians are not going to give you anything. And at some point, you need to understand that this takes a mass movement in order to get anything accomplished. I will end this with Lawrence O'Donnell, who makes this point very succinctly and amazingly, awesomely, because he was once behind working in the context of the Democratic Party and can give you very clear Politics 101 understanding of what I am saying.
To pull the party, the major party that is closest to the way you're thinking, to what you're thinking. You must show them that you're capable of not voting for them.
Because the way the Democratic Party is run now for quite a number of presidential cycles is they pick a nominee in a kind of half-assed process that doesn't really represent much of anybody. And then they tell everybody to just shut up. Don't bring up anything that will complicate life for your nominee. You know he's not for you on this. Why badger him? He's not going to be for you for reasons that you don't understand but are good reasons. Shut up. Turn off your brains.
If you don't show them you're capable of not voting for them, they don't have to listen to you. I promise you that. I worked within the Democratic Party. I didn't listen or have to listen to anything on the left while I was working in the Democratic Party because the left had nowhere to go.
When Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez...
Right there. The left had nowhere else to go. You were cowed. Meaning, the group, us, that whether you want to call it cosmic responsibility, philosophical responsibility, whether this was something that in an incorporeal dimension, we kind of over multiple lifetimes came to this particular conclusion, whatever it is that has gotten us to this particular political disposition where we look out at the world and ache over what the world is because we have this quirk in the way that we think about this stuff to realize that A, there is no point, and B, the world could be fundamentally different than what it is, and C, organizing a life, a reality that has no particular point in a political system that could be somewhat anything, providing that it's adhering to certain rule sets of life and humanity, meaning to keep it cohesive or keep it stick-to-itive and able to propagate itself. In a reality like that, we decide to organize ourselves where we stay persistently vulnerable and give the overwhelming majority of the resources to a 1%. So when we need ventilators, that money is at the 1%. When we need medical assistance, that's at the 1%. When we need to ensure that people aren't living on the street or people have health care, that money, those resources have gone to the 1%, despite the fact that we are the ones that are creating those resources. It is maddening for us to look at a world in these terms. Great. You see the suffering, you see the militarism, you see all of this stuff. That stuff aches in you. You see the climate devastation or the environmental devastation that may end humanity and the way that we go about our affairs on this particular planet. It aches, it pains in you. Great. What are you going to do about it? You have been, despite all of these big items that burn in you, you have been stuck in a political disposition where you have been the politically abused spouse or the political equivalent of the abused spouse in the Democratic Party. It doesn't matter that Bill Clinton destroys Glass-Steagall or destroys welfare or destroys the telecommunications issue. It does not matter that he passes NAFTA. It doesn't matter that Obama gives 95% of the income to the top 1%. It doesn't matter that Obama defends Wall Street. It does not matter one iota that he let homeowners go bust. It does not matter that he enshrines Bush tax cuts into law. None of that stuff matters. It doesn't matter that he's trying to pass the TPP. You still acquiesce and en masse support a party that in no way represents your interests because they can always scare you with whoever is in the other party. I hate to tell you this, Donald Trump is already president of the United States. That's your reality. And that's your reality with you lumping in to that particular party. It is time to do something fundamentally different. It is time to grow up and realize that those big items will never get accomplished by acquiescing to that particular party. You need a mass movement of human beings, meaning there needs to be an organization where you are bringing in Walmart workers, Target workers, McDonald's workers, Burger King workers. All of these people have been fucked over by our economic system. The overwhelming majority of the people in this country that are working at low service jobs. Give those people a message, organize those people to your particular political cause, and you know what will be an amazing brain center for that? Basically, the Sanders campaign. Because my fear is, if Sanders flames out, and he doesn't try to use that particular email list, that group of support that he has been able to web together all throughout the country, that it would just fiddle away. And I think this is a poor end to this particular campaign. And like I said, I have complicated feelings towards Sanders. I think the level of weakness that was displayed in that campaign is appalling and political malpractice. By the same token, I recognize that Sanders has brought these issues into the mainstream in a way that no one has done before. So yeah, my feelings of Sanders are complicated. But the weakness that his campaign is displaying here, the unimagination that his campaign displaying here is, yes, appalling. I'll end it here. Like, share, subscribe, Pop Reality, hashtag refund Bernie, friendship/movement. Yeah. I just think, look, my just thought is you turn what you have into something else. If you're indeed leader of a movement and in a political space, fair enough. You have the movement. That movement hasn't gone anywhere, but you do need to create that in a way where all of these people can organize, communicate, interact with, and come up with ideas and policy positions that they can push for en masse as one united group all across the United States that they are willing to either accept or not based upon whether or not their policy proposals are adhered to and accepted. Otherwise, you would never get anything done. You would never get anything accomplished. You would continue to be browbeat, ridiculed, marginalized by a party that believes that you're going to give them their support just because you're going to give them support, not because they're going to give you anything. Until that particular model of politics changes. And yeah, that means you have to not be cowardly in regards to dealing with the party, being cowed by this monster of the Republican to do so. I'm not thinking about politics in one specific election. I'm thinking about politics over the course of time because the next election happens. The one after that happens. The one after that happens. All of the fear mongering that has taken place over the last 40 years about the Republican. Well, that's 40 years. Those elections continue to take place. What if you took a particular political strategy like I am talking about now, back then? What would have been the result in comparison to what you have right now? I hope you understand what I mean. At some point, you need to have an autopsy of the way the left has behaved in politics. And you need to come to the conclusion that that has not worked. And you need to start thinking about other ideas, not in a singular election, but more so over the course of time. Like, share, subscribe.